Alright, doing response video to comments, I think, on My Misery and Me's video. A lot of Luddite comments in here, so I figured I'll mess with these and such. I probably should have a better background, but you probably can't read them anyway, so it doesn't matter. There is no, so this is starting at the bottom, there is no objective perspective, as perspective necessitates subjectivity, so one's life cannot be objectively worse than it's phenomenally experienced, if, as anti-natalists contend, notions of good, bad, and better and worse are contingent on experience. So Jay said, ignorant people can think their life is good, but they know better. But if they knew better, they can rationally conclude that their life is actually much worse than it actually believed. So that's just the delusion of, perspective. Then he says, objective perspective, we are products of evolution, propagating DNA. All that is needed for objective perspective is good logic and evidence. So I'd go the step further and just say that we can understand objective properties. We understand that things have properties. And we are just saying that the properties themselves are objective. Yes, you have a subjective interpretation of those properties, like the moon. But we really can't, there are undebatable properties. How many lumens of light are coming off the moon, how far away it is, what its diameter is, its mass. These are objective properties. There's no more room for dispute about these properties, and there can be objectively or absolutely stated that this is a good solid truth statement. So you can't turn everything into some sort of subjective argument. It's not a subjective argument. It's an argument about beyond reasonable doubt evidence of properties. Okay, Luddite. As to Benatar's asymmetry, my time in Tiny Chat, it was sufficient to establish that even on its own grounds, premises are true. It's a non sequitur at best. At best, only establishes that failing to come into being is an impersonal good. So again, you're just going to keep obsessing about personal versus impersonal, and it just doesn't matter. The point is the person is a thing that has properties, and those properties are the capacity to feel, and that it has a feeling state that's either positive or negative, and that's the stated value. Again, I've said it in enough videos, value is created by sentient beings. When they exist, they are creating value. They are in value states. Their experience is a value state that goes beyond just their experience. They are qualified as a value entity by having the ability to feel. If I created a sentient being and I stuck a knife in it, there would be a value judgment that I have accomplished a negative. As I created something that could feel, I created negative feelings being experienced. It was a negative event. The event of creation and murder sum totaled, net totaled, to a negative thing to do because the negative created wasn't worth the value of the experiment, which was nothing. So, not that complicated. Alright, up to this one. And again, we can imagine our lives as better, but this does not necessitate that life, as it is relative to the potential betterness, is bad, or all things considered negative. Jay goes into the zero-sum game argument. Life is a zero-sum game. Anything positive or good life is built upon the satisfactions and needs of desire. There is no such thing as a true positive to it in existence. So this is the key argument. And we're going to wrangle about this one, I guess. I thought we'd already established that it really doesn't matter. Even if I concede your argument that there is some kind of genuine good in creating a hungry machine and letting it loose in the universe to go Pac-Man its way and satisfy its hunger, and therefore the universe has been benefited because a feeling thing has satisfied a hunger. That still, we have so much suffering endured for that process that there's no way the the balance on net is anywhere near efficient enough. So it's way too much gasoline for way too little movement in terms of value. But if you're going to force the argument and force me to again eradicate all positive value, I can do that by just again using these examples, that there is no value without first creating something called a need, a hunger. So I mean, it's too bad we don't have a really good word for the nature of hunger. You know, we use the word hunger, and that's just so associated with food. And yes, it has some association with these other things, but yes, horny is hunger, ego is hunger. These are all hungers. These are all things that the accomplishment only has value because of the desire mechanism, because of the hunger in the thing. The thing needs to do it. It doesn't need to get done. And so I could just argue that if I hand the universe, the blank universe, let's say the universe has some kind of mechanical competence, and I can just hand it a crying baby, why should the universe see any value in that? I mean, you're giving it this wonderful gift of a need machine, something that wants. And why should it think that, oh, this is so cool, I can give it a bottle and it can feed, and that'll somehow satiate its hunger, and that'll be somehow a good thing that I didn't have before. I mean, there'd be no logic that would say this was logical. So this whole imagery of satisfying need has been developed into human psychology and perverted into this is a true good. You're no longer recognizing that all you're doing is cleaning up your mess, and now you've decided to call cleaning up your mess building the Brooklyn Bridge. Even building the Brooklyn Bridge is in a way cleaning up a mess, right? It's solving a problem that too many humans created, right? I mean, you really can't come up with a thing that you make that has any value except to eliminate negative circumstances, circumstances that are irritating or frustrating or damaging in some way. And when we try to do something that doesn't have those elements, it just turns out to be some kind of dopey statue. The Washington Monument. Yeah, doesn't solve any problems, doesn't do a damn thing. Yeah, there's also no positive value in any way. It doesn't generate electricity, it doesn't do a fucking thing. So, I mean, you just really can't come up with any kind of definition of what this positive thing would look like that you could give the universe. A positive making machine, a perpetual energy machine. So that's sort of what you're saying exists. You're claiming that there exists this perpetual positive machine. Something that will produce more positive than negative if you let it run. And I'm arguing that I don't think there's any way you could describe that thing. No way. Alright. And do you ever go into amendment? Oh, I gotta read this X-free guy because Luddite says he makes good points when they're just horrible points. So he quotes the quote, not if your imagination of what would constitute a better state of affairs is false. So that's just easy to say, but impossible to make anything out of. You want to, well, yeah, exactly the same logic, but false, because what you imagine to be worse doesn't necessarily also have to be better or worse. So he's just arguing partly what he's going to argue in another argument, that somehow you could just reverse the argument. So if you're making the argument that you need the negative state before you can have the positive state, that somehow he could make the argument that you need the positive state before you can have the negative state. And that's fundamentally not true, because the positive state, again, doesn't have any form whatsoever. We all know what a need is, and we all know what suffering is. And my point is you wouldn't know what relief was, the sensation of pleasure, because you can't imagine ever being in a state so blissful that you say, I need double bliss. Right? I mean, if you have bliss, a blissful state, a comfortable state, a complacent state, there is no hunger, and therefore there cannot be any perception of, oh, I could use another double cheeseburger. You have to be hungry to be able to eat another double cheeseburger. I mean, shit. Anyway. And do you ever go into amendment Saturday night? Okay, that's just the debate question. That doesn't have anything to do with the subject itself. It's experientially false, cliche at this point, that there are no true positives. Okay, so you're still going to argue this argument, even though you said we resolved this. And it's not logically necessary. It's not empirically verifiable, and 5 is less than 10 is not therefore a negative number by analogy. Life may be less good than possible and not negative. Well, again, you can say it, but I'm just saying, where do I go to model it or conceive of it? Where do I go to conceive of the condition where I can be perfectly comfortable and yet still be hungry? How do I imagine creating something, me personally creating something, launching it into space, and saying the thing I created is of value, and I hope it replicates, because what it does is productive. So it's a thing that goes into space and it does something productive. I mean, again, we're back to this argument, but I mean, would you really conceive of it being somehow productive for you to put life on another planet? To say, here, so I'm just going to initiate life on another planet. I'm going to create these machines, these sentient beings, so they can go chase each other down to gratify the same need over and over and over and over again. And you'd say that would be a productive thing to do on another planet. I can't imagine how it could possibly be productive. LOL, made up bullshit. What do these negative numbers refer to? So I'll read this. It's not empirically, objectively verifiable. That's because people's psychologies are highly adaptive to their circumstances. People living in object poverty can say they are doing okay if they don't have something to compare it with. And well, they're going to say it to gratify their own ego anyway. So he's saying it's a made-up number when, well, part of this is quoted. This is so lame. Yes, 5 is not negative number, but the point is we're trying to make here is that life is a zero-sum game, i.e. going from 10 to negative 5 entails pleasure, also 10 to 5 is wrong. Exactly. Well, we're never in a euphoric states that we can maintain. So there are always states of goal. You know, they're always the peak of the mountain. They're not the valley. And obviously we wouldn't climb the mountain if we were in a euphoric state. So there's no way to describe the pyramid in the upside down position. We don't exist in a little state of harm to gain a huge state of bliss. That's not the dynamic of anything close to a living thing. Anyway, gotta go. Alright, back. Yeah, get going. So we're still back on this argument of recognizing the distinction that it really is hard to create something of pure value, that we, generally speaking, need to put in some pain to get a gain. The more heartsick you are, the more glorious the romance. The more, the more you want, the better the satisfaction. Just sort of the way the mechanism works, and the harder the pain, the greater the relief. Relief is just so fantastic, and you're just so elated to be, free of a burden. But it is all kind of a burden mechanism. And again, this isn't an argument that Luddite required being resolved. I mean, it's the gnarliest of them, I will concede. Because our psychology has the illusion. It's like trying to tell a racist that it doesn't matter, the white skin isn't superior. I mean, they can't see it that way. They can maybe understand it that way, but they can't feel it that way, because it's like me saying, okay, I'm going to change my sexual preference and engage in sex merely with people who I like as people. So I'm just going to have sex with people's brains and ignore their body in some way, or I'm going to try to contrive the desire. You just can't do it. I mean, it is a mechanism of prejudice, and again, that psychological mechanism. I mean, there's some points where philosophy has to concede that there exists a psychological structure, and that I can't make you rationally I can't make you rationally change your psychology. I can only help you or try to get you to understand that your psychology is playing you, that it is making you see something as desirable, and that that's just a contrivance, and that the real value has nothing to do with what you're perceiving as valuable, like a food preference or a sex preference. Well, anyway, as clarified, to say that persons propagate DNA is true from a reductive materialistic perspective. Well, it's true from the any perspective. It's true. DNA replicates, yes, and phenomenologically false, where it would be more accurate to say persons propagate persons, which is stupid. The molecules initiate a replication process, and it is kind of the molecules' business. We are basically, all this edifice is the facade. The real core, the real machine of us is the sex cells, the little sperms in the egg. That all the rest of this is a shield, mechanically. In many respects, we're just the hardware, and the real deal is those little tiny hunks of nucleic acid. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, this is Jay's responses, which are good. I mean, I'll read them, but I don't want to make the video too long. Yeah, they're quite good responses. I mean, persons propagate persons. There is no persons. There's just biological entities which are particular configurations of matter energy. Person is just an invented abstract term. So that's really good, just pointing out that you're, again, playing just word games. And word games aren't an argument. Coming into existence involves harm as a contingent fact about our universe, but this does not entail, all things considered, the benefits of existence that are abstract, absent existence. The benefits of existence that are absent existence. Okay. That sum total actualized state of affairs is that of harm. Again, a non sequitur. Coming into existence involves harm as a, and this is in parentheses, as a contingent fact about our universe. But this does not entail, all things considered, that the sum total actualized state of affairs is that of harm. Again, non sequitur. Well, again, you've already conceded that argument, so I don't even know why we have to re-argue it, but fine. So now you're saying that overall, your enjoyment of your chocolate cake fun and your roller coaster rides is okay to give a kid cancer. I don't understand. I thought this was an argument already done with. You've got a whole biosphere that's been tormented for 4 billion years to create your joy. And you're saying it's all okay. I mean, you haven't... Sorry, I just don't understand. And you're going back to the original argument. So I thought this was resolved, that certainly you have to do this living thing a lot more efficiently to come up with any net gain. And I'm still going to argue that I think once you start pulling the weeds, you'll see the whole garden is weeds. There are no flowers in this garden. It's all weeds. They're all unnecessary needs. Indeed, the whole life is a net negative or zero sum is a steaming manure pile of falsity. Well, now you're saying the net. So you're saying it's not a net negative. So, again, you conceded this argument, and now you're arguing the argument again. It's okay, fine. So we're back to zero again. You think that all things considered, your silly, satisfied ambitions is worth all the horror. The Holocaust was worth it. The 50 million lives ruined badly, harshly, nastily over a 4-year, 5-year period. It was all the goddamn thing was worth it. And if we have another one, or 10 more, or 500 more, it'll never be too many for you, right, buddy? Because you know what the appropriate amount of horror is to impose for your silly accomplishments. Fuck you. This is a steaming pile of crap, is to go over crap we already resolved. Experientially false, logically Incorrect. Well, you can't be talking about logic and experiential crap in the same sentence. That's just right there is a non sequitur. Less good than possible does not entail hedonic negativity. Well, again, it all depends on what you think the truth of the positive state is. Is the positive state contentment and comfort, or is the positive state something less than that? So you're saying that it's still a positive if a person wants and needs and desires. So again, if I let Pac-Man loose in the universe, the fact that it's hungry and it satisfies its hunger is all I need to do, is create something hungry, give it something to eat, and I've therefore created something the universe, if it had a brain, would say thank you. Thank you for making this magnificent thing that contrives itself a need, and it enjoys itself in both states, the need state and the gratification state. I don't buy that argument. That sloppy suppose and omnipresent correlate between negative, positive, hedonic experience. Well, I don't know what that even... Yeah, Jay didn't even respond to that because it's too incoherent. The qualification being proffered here, hedonic experience fluctuates between negative and zero, is nothing other than non-experiential question-begging and clearly truth-unreflective metaphysics. Well, if you want to call it names, go ahead. There's a truth, okay? I mean, either the truth is one or the other thing. Either there is what you think there is, which is there's some intrinsic gift that you actually can give the universe. You actually can purchase something, make something, wrap it in a box, and give it to the universe, and it's an automatic win. Or, as we theorize, no, all you can really do is give it a car lease. You can give it a crying baby. You can give it as something that needs feeding. You can give it something that's going to make a mess, and then it'll clean up the mess and say, wow, at least I cleaned up the mess. But you won't make any positives out of this mechanism. It runs on the negative gasoline, and it produces gasoline. That's the stupidity of the machine. It's a gasoline producing machine that consumes gasoline kind of idea. And it consumes more than it'll ever be able to produce. It's easier to make the messes than it is to clean up the messes. This is its intrinsic fail. Then clearly unreflective, the whole, well, I'm just saying, see, even part of how you can figure this out, again, you're claiming that we should be mourning the non-existent huge positives that have been sacrificed to our neglect. So the fact that we didn't make another 7 billion people on planet Earth, that we didn't have aggressive policy to make more babies because they're automatic winners, that we aren't having some kind of policy to put life on the moon or some other planet. We could do it. We can, obviously, radically alter the form of organisms, and we certainly could, if we deliberately tried, evolve organisms to find it possible to live on Mars, at least in some sort of semi-sheltered environment, and they could evolve the environment. Would that be an ethical thing to do? I think it would be preposterously unethical. So again, we don't lament the absence of these things, and the reason why we don't lament the absence of them is because we don't really believe any of this nonsense. People do not sit there and say the horror of all these non-existence, because they know that they come with a huge liability. They're not a free lunch. We don't miss it because it's not free, it's expensive. We don't miss expensive things. Alright, the whole negative experience has real value is so utterly false. It's practically tautologically false. Well, again, it is in every one of our experiences. We demonstrate how it is not false, how much we value protection. Often we'll spend so much money for the little bit of security. Tiny infractions against our well-being. We'll spend huge amounts of money. So it's just nonsense. We do value the negative. And I think even you would do so if put in the circumstance where you had to really barter with somebody else's welfare. If it was somebody else's welfare at stake, I think you'd be able to make the rational choice that one rat's happiness is not worth another rat's horror. And you'd clearly be able to say, this is an experiment I would not conduct. There'd be no profit here. There'll only be loss. And you'd be able to recognize that. And again, it's a fact of even our psychology. Like I said, I can't even psychologically manifest to give a damn about the non-existent Moonikins. It's because I intrinsically feel, my psychology kind of knows that this game is me. It's about me. It's not about you assholes. And that's the corruption. The only real value is the psychological perception of value. The value is not rational and logical and imperative. There is no, we're not sacrificing or compromising a huge amount of value by not having Martians. Okay, so I'll read these idiotic comments. These are important ones. This next knowledge is free guy. So I think it starts down here. Suffering is also valuable to the sufferer, not objective value. So again, all we're saying is that that's not, an objective value just means that it's an objective definition statement about a value state that's been experienced. It's an objective statement about the fact that something suffers. And the fact that something suffers does make a difference in all equations, okay? So if you are going to do something and the fact of the circumstances is that somebody's going to be, like drunk driving or something, the reason why you don't do it is because, the only reason why there's an imperative not to do it is because there's an objective recognition that there'll be negative suffering incurred and that has negative value and the value is real. So again, it's not about what the sufferer is going to experience, it's about the fact that the experiencing of suffering is a negative thing in and of itself. It is negative. If you have a whole bunch of it in the universe, you have a broken universe, you have a bad universe, you have a suffering universe. Duh. I mean, these are stupid comments. And there is no need to do anything. Okay, so I love this crap. This is just so Darwinian and bullshit. The very fact that we can commit suicide showed there isn't actually any need. Well, again, obviously people are driven to suicide. They do not commit suicide easily and gracefully and just, without any kind of hardship or imposition. It's a hard act to commit, not an easy act to commit. But that all need is relative to the will to survive. Well, again, you're claiming there's a will to survive. I had no such notion of, I still don't even bother with thinking about surviving. Once in a while it'll pop in my head that I could drop dead of a heart attack. No, but most of the time I'm concerned about comfort. I'm not concerned about surviving. It's not something that just I even bother wasting any time on. I'm not driven by a will to survive. I'm driven by a will to keep myself comfortable. And I'm saying most animals, of course, are doing that. They're not trying to survive. They're trying to maintain their comfort. You only have needs because you want to survive. Well, again, you say you want to survive. That's just, I think that's just preposterous nonsense. You don't have to have any notion of survival whatsoever to be compelled to maintain your comfort. So you don't understand shit about our biology or the psychology of any sentient animal. Sentient animals live for their comfort. They don't live to survive. It's like they don't deliberately reproduce. They have sex, retard. There is a need coming from the currently existing humans to propagate humanity. Yeah, it's a delusion, okay? It's a notion in their head and nothing more. It's about their vanity, and that's the argument here. There's nobody propagating because they think humanity needs to exist and all this crap. They're doing it for vanity reasons. It's vanity propagation. Because otherwise no one would be motivated to do anything anymore. Well, that's again so silly. Like our only motivation is to replicate the molecule. Sorry, no sale. Our motivation is to please the organism. So it is also a consequence of the will to survive. Again, the will to be comfortable. And we can become comfortable without replicating. Perfectly comfortable without having babies. Many people find having babies to be something that would disturb their comfort. It's against their will. They have a will not to replicate for selfish reasons. All need and contingent upon the will to survive. Again, it's not the will that expresses itself in sentient organisms. Sentient organisms have a will to be comfortable. If you want to change that, you'll have to change the human psychology. Well, again, this whole argument is about philosophy, and changing psychology has absolutely nothing to do with it, right? I mean, you don't have to. You could have a psychology where you desire, you're a pedophile, for example. You probably are a pedophile, and you could have the knowledge that what you desire, you just can't have. So your philosophy is going to override your psychology. So yes, you could live your whole life desiring and recognizing that you can't have what you desire. That's simple. I could desire to be a billionaire. Doesn't mean I have any right to be a billionaire. Doesn't mean I ever will be a billionaire. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to satisfy a desire, and you can philosophically understand why you won't be able to satisfy it. If we were to be the last generation, what sense would there be in writing a book or symphony or curing a disease or righting an injustice? Well, again, yeah, there would be no point in being a janitor. That's right. The point would be in having nice orgasms, and so you'd have orgies and parties and eat lots of cake and shit and ice cream and all that kind of crap, but you really wouldn't worry about any of that crap anymore. It'd be really cool not to have to worry about any of that crap. It's not that each of us thinks he or she is doing something for the ages directly. The way Aristotle or Darwin, well, Aristotle might not even exist, and Darwin or Mozart did. No, Mozart, come on. But that we tend to think we are part of keeping something going that stretches beyond the confines of our own lives. Well, whatever. This is just baby talk. This isn't what most people live for. Most people are just figuring out how to get into their neighbor's wife's panties. So this is just a big, giant, preposterous lie. They're not even thinking about productivity equations and actually giving the world more than they take from it. These aren't even notions. These aren't even ideas coming anywhere close to the average human's brain. So you're just such a fucking preposterous liar to sit there and pretend human beings are wearing this good guy suit. What a fucking lie. Anyway. So it is impossible to adapt the attitude that you can adopt the attitude that you can be an anti-natalist, but you can also enjoy at the same time your life as if everything else would remain the same. Well, look, there's all kinds of things you can live through and past. So there could be a 20-year war, and you find a way to acclimate to it, and you still have sex with your wife, and you still do some things, and you still have romantic dinners. Yeah, you still find a way to live through it. Yeah, and it sits on top of you and says, this sucks. But I just don't understand. How could I not, being an anti-natalist, how does that get in my way at all in terms of my personal life? I mean, I was an anti-natalist before I philosophically was an anti-natalist. I didn't want a baby, ever. What would I do with a fucking baby? I mean, you really, do I have a use for one? No. Is there, there's none. There's no, this is just such a, I mean, I don't know what kind of poofter, doofter, fanny packer you are, but I mean, what are you, a woman? I mean, what do I need a baby for? What am I going to do with a baby? What? Explain it to me. Why would I at 10 years old or 20 years old or 30, why would I ever want a fucking baby? What am I going to do with this thing but worry about it? Why would I want one except for vanity? Beyond this vain notion of I'm going to create some sort of mutation of myself that's been perverted through the filter of my wife's disgusting ancestry. Yeah, besides that, I mean, even if I could clone myself, I still wouldn't do it. But I'm just, why would I want this diluted version of myself running around? Why? Except for vanity. So that's just such a fail argument. So anyway, so fuck you, Luddite. Really, this was sort of obnoxious crap you posted here, considering our conversation. And to call these all good points as usual, X knowledge is free. Do you think this is a good point? That somehow you can't manage to find purpose or function or enjoyment in life if you recognize the fact that there's just no point in making more of these things? That I wouldn't impose it on a dog? That conclusion somehow now will eliminate all capacity to get a boner? I can't get hungry. I can't have an enjoyable meal. I can't listen to music anymore. What? That's a good point? No, that's a preposterously idiotic point. It's fucked-hearted to cubed. Yeah, and you're feeding that moron crackers. Fuck you.